Jeez. Hi, I'm Ken Dolan-Del Vecchio, and this is the Pet Loss Companion, a weekly broadcast that my friend and colleague and co-author Nancy Saxton-Lopez and I do every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And then it's available as a podcast on Apple Podcasts and Anchor and a whole bunch of other places. And it's also available as a video cast on YouTube, and hopefully some people are joining us live as well. And this is an opportunity for us to share some thoughts and recommendations for people who are working through the loss of a beloved animal companion. We draw from the experiences that we had for decades supporting people in a pet loss group who had come because they had either had an immediate loss, or it was the anniversary, or there was some reason that they really could use some support with the loss of their pet. And so this is a way to take that information, take that support, and give it to a broader audience. We want to say from the beginning that this is a program that is a friend of Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I'm going to read a little bit about them. Dakin is a 501c3 community-supported animal welfare organization that provides shelter, medical care, spay and neuter services, and behavioral rehabilitation for more than 20,000 animals and people each year. And they're very concerned about the animal companion human being bond. It's something that they put a lot of focus on. Since its inception in 1969, Dakin has become one of the most recognized nonprofit organizations in central Massachusetts and a national leader in animal welfare. You can learn more about Dakin and make a donation at dakinhumane.org, and that's DAKINHUMANE.org. They're a wonderful organization, and if you're in the local area, it'd be great to go and visit them. You'll be amazed at the programming that they have and the ways that they are set up. It's a really large shelter.
Nice. And so, Ken, I wanted to ask you, I know our last episode last week had a lot to do with the death of your beloved Isabel. How's it going?
It's going fine. It's going weird. It's just weird, right? It's like I'm pretty okay, but there are moments when I'm really down, and I tend to do things like play music that provokes sadness over and over and over again. And so that's one of the ways that I get my feelings out. I also had an experience where I was thinking about Isabel, and I was outside. I'm outside a lot. And a bird just came and almost took off my hat. I wear a big, floppy, dirty hat when I'm outside because I'm gardening and trying to keep the sun off me. And it was really quite something. I was thinking about her, and this bird came by. It was either a bluebird or a meadow swallow, which are really common. We have a lot of bird boxes, bird houses here. It was just really striking to me. So I feel like Isabel's around, but it's just very sad. We also got her ashes back a couple days ago. So she is now joined Jack and Lily on the hutch. So it's the weirdest thing, because there's Isabel and Jack and Lily, who knew each other in life. I mean, they all lived together during their lives overlapped. And then we have Abigail, who is, of course, still with us, thankfully. It's just very strange to have your little friend, your beloved family member, is now represented by a little box with a plaque on it.
I know.
So, yeah, thanks for asking. But I'm doing okay. It's just, it's a very strange up and down experience, and it will be for a while. And, I've done some exploring of whether I'm going to adopt another pet soon, and looking at looking at some of the shelter postings in the area. So looking at Dakin, looking at Second Chance Animal Shelter, both of which are very near to me. So doing that kind of stuff. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course.
And let's talk a bit about this wonderful story that we got from Stephanie and John in Illinois. Very sad, poignant story about their dog, their Dalmatian Calvin, who died on June 2nd. He was near death, and they took him to the vet, and the vet said that it was time, and so he was euthanized. And they sent us. Stephanie wrote out a really beautiful narrative about
just
the whole
process.
The way they work through this, the process. And there's beautiful photographs of Calvin, of his body, of the burial. And the story ends, and I don't want to give it away, but the story ends in a way that's really in line with what we've been talking about when it comes to signs and comforting signals from your lost beloved animal companion. So that story, I posted it on our Facebook Pet Loss Companion page. It's now posted just a little while ago. I put the link also on our YouTube description for this broadcast today, and I'll put it on Anchor, so it'll be on the podcast link as well. So it's a PDF. It's really it's beautiful, and it's
well worth reading.
I think it's something that will bring a lot of people comfort. And as we share that, we encourage you to share your stories with us, to share your questions and comments, because it's very important for people to hear from one another. And while we don't have a group, we can be a hub for sharing information that people are willing to bring forward and make available to other people. It always helps others to hear how another family or another individual is going through this and finding peace ultimately through this really challenging process.
And also as a support. That's the beauty of a group. We can try to do that as best we can in this format, but that's the beauty of a group, of going in and really talking to people who are going through it or have gone through it, and just feeling comfort, feeling home, that you have these people that really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So tonight we were going to talk about grieving in general. There's really no wrong or right way to do it.
How we get through it. And, I was thinking about that. Some of the things we do seem kind of irrational. So like I said, I found these songs mostly somewhere over the rainbow and the rainbow connection. I'm laughing at myself, and I would just play it over and over and over again, different people's versions. And I would cry and cry and cry. I'm thinking, well, I can tell you, I do some strange things when I'm grieving. They're not, I shouldn't judge myself that way.
No, you can't.
So we all do, I'm thinking,
It's not right or wrong. It's how you grieve, right?
And outside, all, just being out in nature helps me a lot.
Yes, you're very connected to nature, and need to be connected to nature. It's
but for other people, right? What are some other things that people do? We do all kinds of things.
We'll get into it, but I thought we could start by just kind of giving an overview of what happens, or what to look for, or what to think about in the process. And first, it's not to repress your feelings. Mm-hmm. All feelings are valid, they're right, they're real, and they're deserved, no matter what the feeling is. And of course, you're going to have denial and shock and anger and depression and sadness and yearning and frustration and guilt, all of these things.
Yeah.
But also to take it slow. We've talked a lot on our episodes to be gentle, to be kind to yourself, to be compassionate. You've had a wound, an emotional wound that's going to take some time to heal, and only to take on what you can handle. A lot of times people I can go back to work and I can do these things. And that's part of a defense mechanism against the feelings. And sometimes the distraction is okay, but you don't have to make any major decisions during this period of time.
Yeah. And I think that, that's all very well stated. And I think that this idea of not repressing your feelings is a really important one, because some people just I don't want to deal with it. And if you let out how sad you're feeling, a lot of times you'll be able to get some relief.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do because you don't want to feel, you don't want to cry, you don't want to bawl, all that stuff, but it can release that knot in your gut, at least for the moment, right? And
Yes.
and particularly for men, I'm going to say, it's
Yes.
really okay for us to have our feelings, to cry, to be upset, to be sad, to be vulnerable, to feel guilty, all those things that you mentioned, because if you don't do that, you're probably going to, I shouldn't say probably, you may though incur other kinds of problems as a result. You may have a stomach ache, or you may have a headache, or something, or you may even have heightened blood pressure as a result of just trying to keep it in. So generally a good idea to allow yourself to just feel what you feel and not pass any judgment or not try to control that.
And it's interesting because sometimes people will say, I don't want to cry because I'll cry forever.
Right.
They're so afraid of that it'll never be okay, that they will be demonstratively, sobbing forever. That's not the case. We do need, crying is a natural outlet of pain and sadness, and that's fine. And you
can feel it. It can very readily feel that way. If I start crying, it's just it's like floodgates are going to open. It's not. But we do tend to exhaust ourselves.
Yes, we do.
And I have to tell you, Esme is here, and I
thought I saw a little.
I did not put her out because it's been
little pale.
It's been raining, and she's like all over me. I think she senses what I've been saying. She's like, butting me and licking me. So you may see a tail
taking care of you.
She's trying to take care of me in her own way. Thank you so much. You should go sit somewhere nice now.
Now, some of the other things is, please don't compare your grieving to somebody else's. It's a unique individual experience. So, we've talked a lot about this with couples, right? Like Ken, you grieve a certain way, but Tim grieves another way. Right. I grieve, differently than my husband grieves. So it's okay how you grieve. And there are going to be times, especially in families, where some don't speak at all, some talk all the time, some cry, some don't, some are very stoic, some are very emotional, but that's what it is. Sometimes it takes longer for one person to go through that period, and sometimes not so for another person in the family. So, but that's all okay.
Yeah, and again, you can't impose your sensibility on someone else. You can't tell them that they're doing it wrong or that they need to do something XYZ in order to get through their grief. It's very individualized. And I think about sometimes teenagers do things like they isolate and they blare loud music, or they just don't want to talk to you if you're their parent. It also is important to keep in mind that because you're not seeing the way a person's dealing with it, that doesn't mean they aren't dealing with it.
Exactly.
They might be doing their own thing. They might be journaling. They might be talking to other people. Sometimes members of a couple won't talk so much to each other because they have a sense that it's protective
of the other
their partner to talk to a close friend more, or at least partly.
Or one of the family or one of the couple will say, we got this a lot in the group. The women mostly came. We talked about that. Men didn't come as much. And they would come in and say, my husband saying, why are you still going to this group?
Yeah.
Why do you still need to go to the group? And this was a place for them to feel comfortable talking about their loss. But they were grieving differently than their husbands. Yeah. But that said, it was a little problematic for them because that's, they got a lot of solace and support in the group. Sure. But unfortunately, that was a lot of times what would happen.
And it's just, again, this point that you shouldn't try to control what the other person needs to do. And you also shouldn't try to fix them. So, sometimes that kind of a question would come from a place of control. Sometimes it would come from a place of, I feel badly because I haven't been able to fix it, You just saw Esme's tail, and 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 none of that is constructive. So you can't fix another person's grief. You shouldn't try to control the way they do it. Everything that they do to take care of themselves, unless in some way it's hurtful of self, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, even if you're like screaming into a pillow, it's like you gotta do what you gotta do to get some relief.
I mean, listen, none of us want to feel this way. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's these feelings, these emotions are very difficult to handle. Who wants to be so sad or mm-hmm. feel so empty or to be so angry or feel so guilty? None of us want to do this, but we have talked before. If you don't do this, then there's a possibility, yes, that behaviors could change, a lot of substance abuse to cope with it, or whatever other kind of maybe addictive behavior or physical ailments.
Yeah.
And that accumulates. Grief, if not dealt with, causes inflammation in the body. Yep. So it's hard to do. None of us want to do this, but it's really important for us to take that journey.
It's just and there's no way but through it. There's no way but through it. And one of the things I think also it's important to recognize is that you will probably find yourself asking the same questions over and over and over again. And that can make you feel like you're losing it.
Right.
And it can make the people around you feel like you're losing it. Yeah. But that's part of this too. Like, how am I going to accept this? How am I going to go forward? How am I going to hold on to the fact that they're no longer here? And it's useful for those around us and for us ourselves to reflect on our own doing that by saying, that's how
I'm working through it.
That's how we get through this. That's how we get to a place where we hold on to this news differently.
It's a lot of times, I had one particular woman I was dealing with more recently, and every time I got on the phone with her, she would say, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. I hate this. When is it going to stop? Mm-hmm. But that was part of her process, right? To go through those feelings that you have to go through, even though she really was struggling because it was so painful for her.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that she kept doing. I mean, just saying that, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this is, in a sense, therapeutic.
Exactly.
Because that's, of course you don't want to do it. But the fact that you're saying that means that you are in those feelings and getting them out of yourself.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. You want to keep getting them out of yourself so that ultimately it just feels different over time. And
I want to go back to when the couple issue and one is still grieving and the other one is not so much. But also we've talked about this before is people can't tolerate other people's pain. It's once their pain has subsided and their partner or friend or whoever is keeps going through it, they just want that to be over for them.
Yeah, I mean, it usually comes out of a kind intention, but really we each have our own time frames and sequences. We have our own process that has to be honored if we're going to be respectful of one another. And so that's something to always keep in mind, that it's there's no place for a judgment in this.
That's right.
There's no place for judgment when it comes to things we do that are not harmful to self or others. And maybe we can talk a little bit there are some things that are not the most healthy.
Well, we are going to do that, but I also wanted to say that we want to talk about betrayal a little bit, because I think that you can allow yourself during this grieving process to also have a moment to be okay.
Yeah.
moment to
Yeah.
maybe even be happy, a moment to be relieved. And a lot of people say, but if I do that, then I'm betraying my animal that died.
Yeah.
That makes me, I would never want to betray her. But you need to have that balance to move, to put one foot in front of the other. And it's okay.
And we have a section in the book that's called Welcoming Joy Back into Your Life. And that's, I mean, the guidance that I always give on that is, look, your beloved friend would not want you to be in despair all the time. They had a great life with you, and life ends ultimately. And they would want you to have a great life in the future too, in which you hold them in your heart, you hold them in your memories. But who loves another person would want that person to live in despair for all of their future? I mean, that's just not the way love works.
No, right. And especially love of an animal or from an animal, because they held no grudges, they had no malice. They just want the best for you.
Yeah. And I have to say, when I'm looking at these animals online, and I made a call today and had a conversation about asking them, are you a no-kill shelter? Which was nice to hear that this particular shelter is, because there were a couple of dogs who have to go together, and I was considering that. But at the beginning of that, I did feel a little bit like, well, is this exploration even something that betrays Isabel's relationship I had with Isabel? And I was like, no.
No, Isabel would love that.
That's not what this is about. And it's so, but we have to talk to ourselves that way, I think.
Yes, I
do. We have to take care of ourselves.
This is okay. This is okay that I feel okay right now.
Yeah.
Or I feel, I'm laughing right now. Oh my God, I saw a movie and I'm laughing. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah. But there is, if it's important, I think, for us to gain that kind of self-awareness as we're grieving. It's the same self-awareness that helps us to say, I'm not losing my mind because my feelings are all over the place. I'm grieving. If you can keep this kind of vigilance about, I'm going through grief. Grief makes you feel very disorganized in many different ways, in many different parts of our life. I'm not losing it. I'm not sick. I'm grieving. That's really, that's an important kind of degree of self-awareness, because otherwise all kinds of judgments, and one of the most pressing judgments will be, I should be over this by now. I shouldn't be.
Why am I still grieving?
Yeah. Yeah. So
that goes into some of the unhealthy ways, I think, that people can grieve. And so what they do is they continue to deny that the loss. No, they just deny it. They continue to do that. I mean, we're talking about periods of time. Denial is typical in the beginning. You believe that your animal has died, but I'm talking months, that they just can't move from there.
Yeah, it's important to be in reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to live in the real world. It's important to engage with what's really going on. It's one of the things that we have to teach children, is that you need to interact in the real world. And if you're denying that the loss has happened, you're not in the real, in the realm of our consensual reality, and that's not a good place to be.
Right. Other people do use substances. They become much more involved in substances or more other problematic behaviors, because that has become their coping mechanism. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to deal with it. They just want to be in a different realm, which can be dangerous, obviously, and not healthy.
Yeah.
Others socially isolate.
Yeah.
So you'll find that some people they stop going out. They don't interact with anyone. and that continues for a period of time. They are so focused on their loss that they can't interact with anyone else.
And all these things are there has to be caveats, because
Yes.
some people are like, if you are quite introverted, you probably are going to need a fair amount of alone time
Mhm.
to manage this. But it shouldn't be the case that you feel totally alone. You feel totally alone in your grief. You deserve to have some support. And if you are somebody who tends to be extroverted and you're cutting off from people who are generally very supportive and give you energy, that's not a good thing.
Right.
But all of this has to be tempered through the
Yes.
lens of what's your
Exactly.
personality and how
Exactly.
do you best take care of yourself? I
Yeah,
mean, some of the other things that come to mind for me are when people literally get suicidal.
yes.
I mean, some people seriously, they feel like they start contemplating and planning to hurt or kill themselves. And in that kind of a situation, person really deserves to get professional help,
Absolutely.
and to get with a therapist who can talk with them about the very specifics of their situation and help them figure out how to make sure that they'll be safe and
Safe.
how to be connected to others that will help them to be safe. That's a very complicated very complicated situation that requires very focused, specific assistance for the particulars of their situation.
And professional people.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you have a friend or family member that's starting to talk about those things, the best thing to do is to get them help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also to realize that if you're worried about somebody, if you see that they're so down and they're doing things that make you worried about whether they're even maybe contemplating hurting themselves, it can't hurt to ask them.
Exactly.
It can't hurt to ask them. One of the things that we need to keep in mind is that you will never put into somebody's mind the thought that maybe they should hurt themselves or kill themselves if they weren't there already.
Exactly.
If you're not going to say, wow, I'm so concerned about you. I'm worried that maybe you're thinking about hurting yourself. Are you? That's not going to give them sort of the cue that, hey, maybe I should hurt. It doesn't work that way.
Right. It does not
doesn't work that way.
Right.
So it doesn't hurt to ask, because you will get an answer of some kind that will give you more insight into how they're doing.
More information.
Yeah, more information. Very important.
So, and otherwise, I mean, yes, some people get too overwhelmed with all of the emotions, so they can't function, or they ruminate about the loss, or they obsess about the dog or a cat that's died, or they wallow in guilt. So all of those kind of things that we just talked about are ways that are unfortunately pretty unhealthy.
Unhealthy.
And
they're not really ways to grieve at all.
Right.
They're unhealthy patterns. They're unhealthy attempts to take care of yourself. I mean, it's everything generally people do is trying to solve the problem of how they're feeling, but they're unhealthy patterns.
And always in that case, people will be helped by going somewhere to talk about it.
Talking to
whether it's Zoom, whether it's in person, whether it's in a group, it doesn't matter. It's really important for them to have the ability to kind of share where they are, and talking about it will help them. It'll make them feel better on a whole.
And it also will give them strategies.
Exactly.
We'll give them plans for maybe there are some activities that they can do that will help brighten their spirits. Maybe there are things that they used to do in the past that really energized them that they haven't been doing recently that maybe they could reconnect with. And also, it may be the case that they should see somebody who is professionally equipped to prescribe medication, whether that's a
Exactly.
psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner in the psychiatric field who can give them a prescription that'll help them through this particularly difficult time. It's so important for us to say there's no stigma to that. We at times need help of that sort. I have needed help of that sort. It's okay. It's part of
we all need
how we take care of ourselves.
Exactly.
And so everything that's an option, we should consider if we're in dire straits.
Exactly.
Most people won't be. Most people are going to do things that are going to help them go through their path of grieving, but it never can hurt to get help.
No. And also, it can be complicated by a mental illness. It could be complicated by a family situation. It could be complicated by another loss of some sort. So you're right. It's very unique to that particular person's experience.
Yeah.
So
I guess we're out of time. So we should wrap up. And my message is, if what you're doing to help you get through this isn't hurting you and isn't hurting somebody else, it's a-okay.
It is fine.
It's okay.
Exactly
you should do it. We need to
right,
do,
not wrong. It's yours. You do it.
and if you are doing things that are unhealthy, then it's a good idea to rethink that and to maybe get some help.
Exactly. I ditto you.
Okay. All right. Well, great talking with you as always, Nancy. And next week we're going to have a special program. We're going to have guests, so we'll be looking forward to that, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next week.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.